Welcome to the Darkstream. I'm Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and Infogalactic News. Good to see you all. A little later tonight than normal. We had a development meeting for Divine Right. We've got a group of guys from the dev game course who are working on converting the 1979 TSR strategy war game to a computer game. So I'm kind of excited about that. Thanks. This is the is this what is it? Yeah, this is one of the rare original Galaxian shirts. They normally say, if I back up, they normally say Planetary Knowledge Core, but these special ones are for the original Galaxians only. And then, of course, we have the special burn unit ones for those who are supporting the Infogalactic servers. So, actually, there's a little bit of a small announcement about Infogalactic, and we actually have added new functionality to ForkBot so that it's bringing in the recent changes as well. Actually, we don't need art for Divine Right, but there's another game that's related. I don't know if you're familiar with Fantasy General, but if you're an artist who's potentially interested in working in that, and you're familiar with Fantasy General, we need to do about 200 different units. So go ahead and get in touch. The email's on the blog. Anyhow, yeah, it's just been insanely busy. We're busy with Castelia House and the books. We're busy with the game development, and of course, we're extremely busy with building up Infogalactic. And so, oh yeah, okay, yeah. I remember. I think I remember. I don't think that that your style is going to fit with that, but I'm not sure. Anyhow, just shoot me an email. Anyhow, I'll get back to you and I'll explain exactly what it is we're doing, and you can let me know whether it's in your wheelhouse or not. One thing I've learned in 27 years of game development is that not everyone does everything, and so not everyone does everything equally well, and it's very important to keep those limits in mind. That's, I think, true in life as anything else. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. We've actually got a great set of volunteers working together on various games, on Castelia, on Infogalactic, and all that sort of thing. So, actually, it was interesting that you say that about immigrants, because one thing that I was observing today, and it's something that you never hear from the churchians who are running around talking about how Jesus would want to settle 50,000 Somalians in Dinkytown, is that strangers in the land is considered a biblical curse. In fact, it's actually Isaiah 1:7 talks about how strangers in the land ruling over you, making your land desolate, is a curse that God is going to lay on people, specifically, I think in this case, Israel, for their faithlessness. And so the idea that something that God himself considers a curse is somehow not a bad thing is a absolutely anti-biblical position. They like to talk about the Good Samaritan. Well, the Good Samaritan put up the injured man in a hotel. He didn't bring him home and kick his kids out of their room and then send his wife in to take care of the guy. He put him up in a hotel at his expense. So the Trump's concept of safe zones, Putin's concepts of safe zones, is something that is much, much more in line with the biblical perspective and the Christian perspective than the position that's being taken by the Pope and by the Catholic Church and by all the various charities and aid organizations that claim to be utilizing a Christian perspective. But when they're obviously not, when they're obviously making quite a bit of money and virtue signaling. So I think it's important whenever you see somebody making these false claims about, well, the Bible says that you have to do this and that sort of thing. It's very, very important to make it clear that the kind of invasions that they're talking about does not mean, the Bible doesn't even talk about invasions. The Bible does not talk about it in the sense of armed enemies coming in, because that's what people think about when they hear invasion. That's why it's very bad rhetoric to talk about invasion when you're talking about immigrants, because people just don't see it that way. Now, they start to get it when you say, look, would it have been okay if instead of sending V-2 rockets and Junkers bombers and Messerschmitts to attack London, if they had simply put a whole bunch of young Hitler youth on a boat and then sent them across the English Channel into England to settle there? Would that have been okay? Because that's what we're seeing. And so once you start framing stuff in a way that people can understand and relate to, that's when you can start changing their mind. But you can't get them to change their mind when you throw concepts at them that they don't recognize. And for whatever reason, that's why we've talked about white genocide. Why doesn't that work? Because there's no stacks of bodies. We talk about invasion instead of immigration. Why doesn't that work? Because there's no soldiers in uniforms with guns. You need to pay attention not to what the dictionary definition of the term is, but what the average individual imagines when they hear that term. And so, anyhow, but I think it's very useful. I think it's very effective rhetoric to go and look up. You need to go and look up those verses. And so anytime you hear somebody saying Good Samaritan, you say, strangers in the land are a curse. They are God's curse on a nation. Why would you say that we should be embracing God's curse? So there's always, rhetoric is a continuing game. It's a continuing contest. And so, new terms come up, new concepts are introduced and utilized, and so you always have to be willing to modify and shape your rhetoric, because that's how it works. And so, anyhow, it's one thing that's difficult for people, especially people who are dialectically minded. Anti-white, not particularly. I think that what I've found that the problem is that most people don't really identify as white. There is, I've said many times that there is no white culture per se. And so when you say something is anti-white, they don't necessarily see that as relating to them. Well, that's not me. I'm English. The key thing is you need to ask people. Ask 10 of your friends what they are. If I were to ask, no, white European culture is redundant. It's just European. It's not. There is no European culture. And so, but here's the thing: is we're not all mixed. Most people are not very mixed. It's a myth. I've been over this many times with the guys, some of the guys in the alt-right, especially the sort of white nationalists and stuff. They're utterly convinced that this this magical identity is going to appear and whatnot. But again, all you have to do is ask 10 people around you, what are you? If I ask my best friend, what are you? He would say, I'm a Minnesotan. I am an American. I said, no, but what are you? And then he'd say, well, I'm half Norwegian, half Swedish. You know, and what that means is that is what, yeah, but who cares what Jared Taylor says? 99% of the people in the world don't give a flying fuck about Jared Taylor. I mean, this is the part of the problem that the alt-right has. And so, you know, they're like, well, you know, they refer to people like Richard Spencer or Jared Taylor as if they're some sort of meaningful authority. They're not. You know, the average. I'm not saying that what these guys are saying and doing is totally irrelevant, but they operate in the world of dialectic, and dialectic is all totally irrelevant to the crowd. It's totally irrelevant to, you know, the people that are influenced by the New York Times, by Fox News, and so forth. Well, my thoughts on Hungary and Poland are that they're in much better shape than most of the European countries. They would be better off if they had not joined the European Union. They will be better off to get out of the European Union while they can. And they're lucky that they have governments that are able to do that. Yes, the crowd is always important in the end. So, anyhow, it's no non-English American whites probably can't go back to their European country of origin because they've changed too much. And so the Europeans don't want them. I mean, that's what you have to understand. You might consider yourself Dutch, but the Dutch don't. So, I mean, you know, they would consider you about as Dutch or about as German as you would consider me an American Indian. You know, I mean, I can't tell you how many people will try to deny that I am a Native American, despite the fact that, you know, we have the family tree, we have the DNA, we have the tribe, all that kind of stuff, and yet people will deny it just because the perception is that, you know, because I look like my father, who is English and Irish, you know, they're just, well, you know, you can't be Indian, yeah, and so, yeah, I don't divulge that kind of personal information. The last thing I need is them getting hassled. So anyhow, I mean, you need to keep in mind that, you know, at any time there are at least dozens of people who are in an attempt to, you know, find something to use against me or to harass those around me. So I just don't talk about a lot of stuff that, you know, otherwise I might. But anyhow, the point is that you know, there is a moderate white consciousness in America simply because of the black and white division, and then you know, there was from the very beginning, the 1790 nationalization law said that white people were permitted to become citizens of the United States, and so, you know, in 230 years, there is a little bit of a generic white consciousness, but it's still not the primary identity for 95% of at least 95% of the people who might reasonably be described as white. So it's a non-starter. It's useless at this point in time, and any strategy that is based on that will fail. So, you know, I realize that's not what some people want to hear. It's not what some people want to think. But that is the truth as I see it. So it's possible that I'm wrong. It's not very likely. So anyhow, and you know, the thing is, you have to understand, yes, those things make the situation more difficult. But the situation is difficult. You know, just because there aren't any easy answers, just because we don't want to believe there aren't any easy answers, doesn't mean that. So, well, yeah, but that's not necessarily true. That's absolutely not necessarily true. It didn't happen. I mean, it didn't happen to the Indians. Why would you think that the various European nations are going to come together any better than the Comanche, the Iroquois, the Navajo, and the Apache? What is the proper nationalism for an American? You know, probably, you know, I think that ultimately it's going to become sort of a white American, you know, you know, it'll probably become a white American thing, but there will be regional divisions. And so, you know, that's what people have predicted for a long time. I don't see any reason to deny that. You know, maybe some regions will be more multiracial and more multicultural, others less so. That's the usual pattern. I mean, the thing you need to keep in mind is that things are always much more complicated and complex than the way that the people trying to predict the future wanted to believe. You know, most people are binary thinkers, and so they're constantly trying to say it's going to be this or it's going to be that. But all you have to do is look at what people predicted the future was going to be like before and see how different it is. And that's absolutely right. New identities will probably come about. You know, American is a new identity. Yes, I do believe that there will be ethnic enclaves in the United States. There will also be ethnic enclaves in Europe, which of course there already are. They're mostly called things like France and Germany and whatever. What exactly they will be, we don't know. And yeah, that's one of the big problems that Europe has, is that its leaders don't have kids. And so they don't really care about the future in the same way that leaders who have children do. The migrant situation in Italy is definitely out of control in terms of them coming in, but it's not quite as bad as it might seem, because they all want to go to either Germany or Sweden, and so they don't want to stay in Italy, and they're not trying, for the most part, they're not trying to stay in Italy. Italy has a little bit of a problem because Switzerland will not let anyone come into Switzerland for the purposes of transit to Germany. So, oh yeah, I saw the story about. I'm not surprised. I don't know what Marianne Le Pen will do. I think that she will. You know, she's got, what a lot of people don't realize is she's a single mother with 4 young kids, and so I suspect that she wants to, you know, focus on her children for the time being, and that's, you know, certainly a reasonable thing to do. I think that the Front National is going to do quite well in the parliamentary elections, and hopefully some new leaders will rise to the fore. And yeah, these nationalist organizations will do better with male leaders. But they needed to go through this phase of softening their public face, because the countries needed to get used to the idea that nationalists are not Nazis and whatnot. So. So anyhow, the thing that's important to remember is that these things are processes. You know, they take time, and the whole, you know, like I said, it's taken 230 years for there to be even a moderate consciousness of a generic white identity. And that's only in America. And so, the European countries do not have the history of either black, white, or red. And so, so there's absolutely no, the consciousness in Europe tends to be European versus African versus Muslim. The U.S. obviously does not have the same, and I guess to a lesser extent, versus Jew. But there's so few Jews now in Europe that they're not, other than in Germany for for their whole historical guilt thing. Other than that, it's really not a major factor. So the much more the much bigger lines there are not purely based on color. The African thing is a color thing, but the Muslim thing is a religious thing. So it's a little bit more complicated in that way. No, I don't believe Putin will bring back the Tsar. Do I expect non-European migrants to leave once countries hit economic walls? Yes, I do. Quite a few of them. Not all of them, but they will. Yeah, it is kind of funny. I mean, there's no sympathy whatsoever for the Jews over here about these, laws about dietary stuff and whatnot. Like they just, they passed in Belgium. It was kind of funny. The Jewish organizations were basically, doing their it's the worst thing since the Holocaust shtick, and the parliament just kind of said, yeah, whatever, and voted unanimously for it anyhow. And so now that doesn't mean that there's not going to be some amenable judge somewhere who will overturn everything that the people vote for. I don't know. I don't pay much attention to Belgian politics, but what should be the most immediate political goal for the alt-right? At the moment, it's basically getting rid of the cucks. And no, Mussolini is not very well liked in Italy. I mean, his daughter or his granddaughter is reasonably popular, but there's not really a lot of romantic affection for the historical fascisti. So anyhow, well, that's it for tonight. Thanks for stopping by, and we will look forward to seeing you soon. Have a good evening, and stop by the blog. And we have some new t-shirts by Mike Cernovich we introduced, and we'll have some new Supreme Dark Lord shirts introduced tomorrow. So have a good evening.